This is Inside the Wolf's Den, an entrepreneurial journey with Shawn and Joni Wolfswinkle.
Welcome back to Inside the Wolf's Den with your hosts, Shawn and Joni Wolfswinkle. How are you, Shawn?
Doing good. How was your event this week in Austin?
It was pretty awesome, incredible. I was at an event in Austin. It was the Invest Her conference. So lots of super powerful women. I was on a panel talking about alternative investments, and diversifying your portfolio. So
what's the dynamics like in a group setting like that versus a traditional mastermind or whatever with I'm just curious, like, you know, that was a women's only event, right?
Right.
Like, so is the topics different? Is it the same content? Like, just curious.
I mean, overall, it was, the same content, but powerful women in business. And it was pretty awesome. I got to sit backstage with Kim Kiyosaki. She was the closing speaker there. So met Terry Cole, who's the author of Boundary Boss. So women like striving to be better and helping each other. I mean, it was pretty amazing. So,
that's cool.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and you were a guest speaker, right, at the event. So we're going to talk about some of the questions that you were asked at the conference and kind of go over that. But, to start off. But a lot of it was on, for you particularly, they were interested in how you built your businesses, how you went into franchising.
Right. Because, I mean, it was a real estate event, right?
Yeah.
We talk a lot about investing in real estate in that vehicle. But then also, as you grow and scale, there's others that want to diversify into other businesses, other asset classes, those type of things. And so that's why I was on that panel.
Cool. So, I mean, one of the questions you were asked was because like you said, they were looking at investing outside of real estate necessarily. They were into other businesses. Mm-hmm. Majority of them own businesses, correct? Mm-hmm. The people in the room.
Right.
And the guests. And so one of the things was they were asked, you got asked, was about evaluating franchise opportunities and mm-hmm. the initial costs and the brand recognition and why you should consider it or not consider it. But what was some of your answers to that?
Yeah, so I think, so when we own 5 different businesses, right? Yeah. We own 3 franchises and then 2 independent businesses that we built from the ground up.
Correct.
And of course, there's pros and cons to each of those, right? And I think at the end of the day, when you and I were evaluating, what business opportunities and what, if we wanted to do franchising or not, especially in the property management industry, we were looking at, okay, we didn't really want to reinvent the wheel, right? We had already built our investment company up. And if you own a business, you know how difficult it is doing all that, playing all those hats, right? Getting your SOPs together, your, processes and marketing, all of that, and it's kind of a learning game sometimes as you go along. You don't know what you don't know, mm-hmm. right? Mm-hmm. And so when we were looking at the franchise opportunity, we thought, well, we don't really want to reinvent the wheel mm-hmm. with the property management. We kind of want something that's already in place. Mm-hmm. Had the systems in place, all of that. So when you're looking at franchise opportunities, I think that's one thing you need to look at is what systems do they have in place, right? Because a franchisor should have the groundwork laid out for you on how to operate a business from at the very beginning when you open your doors to when you are mature and managing 2,300 doors, mm-hmm. right? And it's a lot different in between.
Mm-hmm. So the systems, the processes, the marketing, everything in between.
Right. And the technology. Right? Yeah. We're in a day and age now where technology is important. So as you grow and scale, being able to leverage technology and then which also sets you apart from a lot of your competition as well.
Right. Something that I was thinking about this week, and it is in regards to this question too, and I think it's relevant because and we'll get into some of that later on, but one thing that we have a meeting tomorrow and we're talking about strategy and stuff. Mm-hmm. And so, and one of the questions that got brought up was about Mr. Rooter for us. And because I think one of the big questions is when you're diversifying, when you're looking at other businesses, synergies, all that between businesses. And, I know when we've spoken about it on this podcast before, why we bought a Rooter and what mm-hmm. we went into it. But one thing that I kind of realized this morning, or had an epiphany while I was driving, was I think as you're looking at franchises or you're looking at buying a business, I've seen a lot of people within the franchise space, whether it be Rooter, whether it be Real Property Management or other businesses, not succeed. Is a lot of times they're getting into businesses that
they don't know or understand.
Correct. Or a lot of them, especially RPMs. We've seen a lot of people buy RPMs that came from, majority of them came from a corporate world or corporate background, and they're now wanting their own thing. They want, maybe their kids have graduated. Now they want to venture out into being an entrepreneur. They want their own business. So they buy this franchise more corporate-y because it's not a plumbing company. It's a real estate related business or whatever.
Right.
So, but they don't succeed in a lot of times because, number one, they've never built their own business.
Right.
They don't know what it takes. Sometimes they don't have the grit. And then they also don't have the experience in real estate, right? They don't understand the fundamentals of it. And so what my epiphany was, well, let me finish.
Yeah. Okay.
So my epiphany was and so they fail, right? And also they're usually replacing their income. So they might have enough to, like, for 6 months of income, right? Or it's an investment for a year. Or they want to, what you got asked a lot about was doing this passively. So like, hey, I have my real estate business, I have all this, I'm going to buy a franchise passively just to put my money somewhere and let a manager run it and all that. And something that I realized was, in most cases, there are circumstances of where that will work. And if you're buying an established, I think, business that's already up and running, they have all their processes, even if it's a franchise or not franchise, they have good people in place that are running it. Right. They're running on a good system, whether it be EOS, whatever. It's running like clockwork. You can be pretty passive and it's running, and you can just step in and be more of a silent owner, right?
Yeah.
And I think you can make it work. I think if it's a brand new, out of the box, even if it's a franchise, it's going to take a lot of work, right? It's going to take a lot. But if you have no experience in that industry and you have no understanding of running a business, it's going to be very difficult. It's not that's not doable. And so where I'm going with all this is that when we bought Rooter, I realized this morning that, okay, I had experience running businesses. I had experience running real estate related businesses. But
not necessarily a plumbing business. Yeah.
And I thought, because I had remodeled homes, I had built homes, I knew construction and I knew all that. I just had never ran a service-based company in the construction related industry or plumbing industry. And so for me, why I'm getting at this is because after 4 years, I have still not made a dime out of that. We have not made a return. Where these other businesses I'm running, we're making money. We're trying to increase our profitability, increase our growth. I'm still trying to make that business profitable. Number one, I'm trying to grow its revenue. I'm trying to, but I'm going to probably go 5 years before I finally turn that corner. And over those 5 years, what I figured out was I had to learn
100%
everything about the plumbing industry, that type of service industry, which is way different. Real property management, yes, is a service-based industry, but it's way different. There's we're approaching each client, having to sell them at the door, build a rapport, sell them on their knee, all that stuff. It's different than a long-term relationship we're trying to build when we're managing their property. So anyway, there's things that I had to learn for 5 years how to overcome what I didn't know.
Right.
Even though I had 20 years of experience in business, I still had to learn. And it's going to take me 5 years and investing a lot of money before I really overcome that. And I don't know how many people
are willing to do that. Yeah. And that's what we talked about a lot yesterday, right? Because you're 100% right. Think about, if you didn't know business, right? You hadn't run a small business and you get into an industry that you don't know, that's going to take a lot longer. If you think about how long it took us in the property management space, right? It probably, and I said, 15 years later, we have a well-oiled machine that's running on its own, but it wasn't always like that, right? And so I don't think it's realistic to say that you can invest in a franchise passively. I think at the very beginning, I think you have to be committed to it. You have to learn the business. So imagine, Shawn, if you didn't have experience in business, right? And you didn't have experience in the industry of plumbing, that probably would have taken you a lot longer, right?
Yeah. I mean, it took me long enough. I'm still taking, told you it's going to take like 5 years.
The point is, I mean, even think about our property management company. I mean, when we started, it took us, to where it is right now, a well-oiled machine, I would say it's probably taken us 15 years to get to where we want to be. Correct. Right? Where the business runs on its own.
I know, we're like turtles, but.
I know that, but seriously, I think that this is to be said because, a lot of people out there think, oh, it's like, it's easy to, just buy a business, buy a franchise, open up your doors, and voila, you're starting to make money. It doesn't happen that way, right? I think realistically, you have to be committed to it. You have to learn the business, learn how to be a business owner, and then also learn how the industry works.
Yeah. And then it all changes because
COVID hits. Boom.
Government
then we have to figure out, new processes, and a hurricane hits, right? You're always learning. So I don't think you can just passively hand it off to somebody and say, okay, like, make me money, right?
Yeah. I agree 100%. And it did take that. And you got to also figure, I guess, for people that are looking to buy a business or start one, or you're a business owner, you can probably contest to this, but how are you going to live, right? How are you going to pay your bills day to day and also the business? Because like you said, we had a flip business and a rental business that while we were building our property management company, right? We did take a lot of money at the beginning because it took us a while just to build that company up before we ever took draws.
100%. I think we didn't take a salary out of our property management business for 2 years.
Yeah.
Because we wanted to invest everything in it.
Yeah.
To the point where we could take a salary and live off it comfortably, right? So you have to live below your means also.
And then we did the same thing with the virtual assistant business. I think it was a year and a half, I think 18 months, somewhere there, before we started taking draws from it. We kept reinvesting in technology, software, everything else to grow it. And then the plumbing business has been 5 years, or it's going to be 5 years before hopefully I can start taking draws or at least reinvesting, but profit it back into the business. So that just shows you that it takes, man, it's hard, right?
It is. And I think, I not to say that it can't be done, because I don't think that's the right word. I think you can collectively have partnerships, where you have strengths of each partner, and that's how you grow it, maybe a little bit more passive, right?
Correct. Or their resources where they invest, you get but the combination between two of you investing in the business, and so you can grow it quicker. And there's opportunity. There's problems with that. With partnerships
as well.
Down the road when things are good or things are bad, partnerships can be difficult too. But there's cons and pros and cons
to everything.
Yeah. So, and then what about one of the questions you got asked was people argue that franchises can limit their entrepreneurial freedom and creativity, or it's strict operational guidelines, right? And what did you say to that? And how did you respond to that criticism?
So I think, it is a con, right? It is a con that, that you're going to are you going to have restrictions?
Yeah.
Yes, right? Are there going to be rules that you have to follow? Yes. But at the end of the day, again, why you're purchasing a franchise is for a proven business model, systems that work, right? And technology in brand recognition. Yeah. So you're really trading what you don't have in having more control for all the other stuff. Okay. And of course, if you're the entrepreneur that says, hey, you know what? I like to be creative. I want to use my creative mind. I want to make something my own. Well, go do that. That's, then franchising probably isn't for you.
Yeah.
But if you're like us, where we don't want to reinvent the wheel, we want to be able to operate and use our skill set. Like my skill set was building relationships and sales. So it allowed me to go out there and do what I was good at because the operations and the systems was already kind of set in place.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. In regards to that, I think one of the things that you mentioned too, I think when your discussion or talk was, yes, it limits you, but also it limits some of the capacity for if you want to exit the business, if you want to, there's some limitations there because obviously the franchisor is going to have to approve your buyers. They have probably some strict guidelines on the way you can sell it, the way, because they want to protect, and it seems like they got you handcuffed in a lot of times, but they're
trying to protect the brand.
And
right. And I could understand that. If I was the franchisor, I probably would be doing the same.
And I don't, there's some positive to that because it's like, hey, yeah, I have that same brand. So I don't want people running rogue or playing cowboy out there with the brand, that same brand I have.
Because it gives you a bad name,
correct,
a bad rep. Because absolutely.
Yeah. And so you got to be mindful of that. And so that's what they're trying to do. But like a good scenario was like in the PM space, the last, 6 years or so, a lot of big tech money, hedge fund, private equity money came into the space trying to
gobble up a lot of PM companies.
Yeah, they wanted 100%. To create they wanted to take the mom and pop industry and develop it, and they're still trying to make it and succeed at it, and they're struggling.
Yeah, they're not doing a very good job at doing that. Anyway.
But they paid a lot of people pretty good valuations for their businesses, and people got out. A lot of people left the industry and moved on, and
which is probably a good timing for them because they got paid out pretty well.
Yeah, and so you got to look at that, and so you're not going to have that same flexibility always per se in the because they're private equity and all those companies in most cases are not going to go and purchase a franchise.
Right.
So they're looking to create their own stuff. They want the creativity. They want to do their own systems and processes. So you're going to have some limitations on who you're going to be able to sell to. Now there is some private equity that did come into our space,
and that are buying franchises,
but they're looking for larger companies, more established, and they're looking to gobble up 4 or 5 franchises at one time, and so they're looking to just get return on their money. And so, but you got to have your systems, processes, people in place, and there are some opportunities there. And typically it's in the $10 million range or more is what they're looking for because they don't want to just spend.
Right.
Yeah. As far as 10 million in revenue that you bring in every year, they're looking for a little bit larger franchises,
right? So I mean, there's pros and cons to each of it, right? I mean, at the end of the day, I think you really have to look at, what are your vision and your goals for the future, right? I mean, you start there. I mean, if it's if you look at it totally different, you want to create your own company and be able to sell it, for whatever you want, then great, that's what you do.
Yeah.
Right.
And there's always more risk, I think, when you're creating everything yourself. It's not been tested. There's no proven
system, business model, right?
Yeah. And so there's always risk when you're starting your own company, your own business.
Yes.
And so, and just know that majority of the businesses fail within the first 5 years. So
look at that. Keep that in mind. I mean, those are real numbers.
Yeah. So talk a little bit about, going back into our story and kind of how we evolved over the years into different business models and whys and how we kind of strategize that. Talk a little bit.
Yeah, and that came up this past week too, because I think a lot when they hear that I have 5 businesses, they're like, man, that just seems overwhelming, right? Because there's a lot that goes into owning multiple franchises and, building a VA company and a development company. There's a lot of moving parts. So they can't even fathom how that is even possible. But I mean, looking at our story, I mean, it kind of evolved over time because we obviously in 2008, we were, before that we were doing fix and flips and we pivoted into turnkey. And so we kind of, forced to be landlords because we didn't know what we were doing at the time. Right. But a kind of happy accident and which got us into property management.
Correct.
And so when we bought our first property management company franchise, we used the money from the fix and flip business to fund that, right? Which, I mean, we saved probably 2 years of not taking a salary, just plugging it back into the business because we still had our fix and flip business that was really creating the cash for us to be able to live.
Correct.
Okay. And then the second franchise we bought with the money that we were making from the first franchise. You know, we had an older couple that came to us and said, hey, I have a business in Albuquerque, New Mexico. I want to retire. I know you're from here. Would you like to take over this property management company? And it was a perfect timing for us. Yeah. So we used that money from the first franchise to fund the second one, right? And then the third franchise was like, hey, Shawn and Joni, I see that you're super successful in the property management space. We're looking for somebody to run a plumbing business in Albuquerque, New Mexico, right? Which at that time we're like, no, like you can't even pay me enough to open a plumbing franchise, but talk to me a little bit more on what this all entails, right? And so we ended up getting creative financing on the third franchise and open up our franchise. So I think that if you look at it, we kind of got creative, just like we got creative with our fix and flip business or buying houses, right? Same concept, really.
And it was not all at one time.
No.
I think, and it was at the right times at certain times when we felt we had the right teams and people to run certain things. And we've made a lot of mistakes over the years and lived in, you learn each time. But it was always. And around that same time of the plumbing company came the
VA company, which that opportunity.
If the VA would have come before the plumbing, we probably wouldn't have a plumbing.
Right.
But it came after, and it was just an opportunity where somebody sold a business, sold their property management company when they got a good return from a private equity company, and the private equity would not allow them to keep the VA company, so that we were able to acquire that at the same time. So, and it was just an opportunity because we were using multiple VAs at the time. And so it went hand in hand.
Yes.
So, and we had people in partnership, or we brought in partners that could help us build it because we didn't want to do it all ourselves. So it was just the right timing, right, of events.
Yes. And I think that's, now, I mean, because we, as entrepreneurs, we make decisions. Sometimes like shiny objects get thrown at us and we're like, man, like, entrepreneurs suffer sometimes from shiny object syndrome and taking on too much. Right. And so that's something that we've learned throughout the years as well, is like, okay, like if it doesn't align with your vision and your goals, then don't do it, because there's another opportunity that's going to come, like the VA company did, right? And so it's important to, anytime there's an opportunity that comes to you, to really evaluate that. Yeah. Is it something that aligns with my vision and goals? If not, then don't do it. Say no. Yeah.
And sometimes they're really good opportunities. They're just not great for you.
Right.
And so you got to really, it's a hard call. And I think there's that FOMO, your fear of missing out. But sometimes it could be the total opposite, and it could really hurt you. And I've seen too many times where people chase shiny objects and they take away from their core business, and it really
guilty, right? It's something that we've had to experience
in some of our own 100%. Businesses or could we have just kept going in the property management space?
Buying more,
and we've done companies. That, and we've bought 2 other franchises.
So if you really think about it, we kind of own 2 more franchises. So
five total, but they're dormant franchises. Were because they were property management that we were able to roll into our property management space, and then we have those opportunities to open new offices if we need to down the road, which. We go back and forth. Every once in a while I'll get an itch and be like, hey, let's go open another property management company in another market. And like, hell no. Like I'm not going to another city. I'm not doing this again. We'll see. But because we know that business, we ran it, we know what it takes. We know how to build the people, the systems, the processes, the marketing to make it successful. It's just, do I want to go through that again? Or do I want to put forth that much energy in I know it's going to take to build it from scratch. And as the older we get, we're starting to more lean towards buying existing businesses that have the people, the processes, everything in place already, so that we can just tweak it and add our own sauce to it and
make it better.
We find that 100%. That costs more money, but it that's more advantageous to us anymore today. And so that's something that you may be considering, is if you're really looking to just be a little bit more passive and not not go through the battles, the struggle that it takes to really build a business from scratch. You may want to buy an existing thing that's already where really everything's in place, but no, there's still going to be some work because change always creates, they might not like you. They love the old owner and they're not going to like you as so much. And, they might leave. And so what happens if that important key figures leave,
right.
And so there's stuff that happens when you buy existing businesses that can still be
100%.
So,
but the opportunities are out there, right? They're coming knocking on our door every day. So my advice to you out there is just keep looking for those opportunities and be prepared to be able to take down those opportunities, right? If if you're doing fix and flips and wholesaling, whatever, like save that cash so you're ready to take on some of those opportunities.
Yeah. And I think we get asked like the diversification within different companies. And there's been some, I think there's, when I look back at it, there was probably opportunities I could have taken one particular company further if I could have just focused solely on it.
Right.
I've also looked at some of the positives of, hey, when recently interest rates went through the roof, if I just had a fix and flip business just a turnkey, which is what we did for 10 years. So
it would be tough.
It'd be tough because there's not as many investors buying right now. Interest rates a lot of people are just waiting on the side. It was nice to have property management companies, a VA company, other things that I didn't need to change my lifestyle in any way because it was nice. So and
I think you look at that different too when you experience, like we experienced the 2008, crisis, right? Which we had to take back and be like, man, like, I don't know if we can be flipping houses for the rest of our lives. Like it's a roller coaster, right? Yeah. And so that's why we looked at an alternative business model is so that we can have that reoccurring revenue. Yeah. And I think like looking back, like since 2008, like I am so glad we did because through all the downturns, my property management companies and the other businesses that I have helped me stay ahead. I wasn't as we weren't as stressed out, right? I couldn't even imagine having just the investment company.
Something that the other thing that we pivoted into was recurring revenue type of businesses. So meaning like property management, once you sign the contract, every month the tenant pays rent, we get a percentage of that, we do maintenance, we do all that, it comes in. Same thing with the VA company. Once there's outsourced in a company, there's continued revenue stream off of that. So
same with the plumbing company.
Yeah, I mean you have to keep going getting sales, but it's a little different. It's not quite as strong, and that's probably why we struggle too. We like the recurring revenue type of businesses better, because the same thing with when we were developing properties and turnkey, it was like you had to go recreate that every month.
It's transactional.
Yeah, and it's one
right.
And they're larger paydays, but man, I sure like the recurring revenue once you build it. And so that was always our dream and our vision, and that's why we got in the PM space to begin with. Any last minute thoughts or takeaways?
I think it's there's a lot to unpack there, and so if you're looking to acquire a business or get into franchising, like reach out to us. Like we have some knowledge there in building businesses and diversifying into not just different asset classes but different businesses as well.
Yeah. So always info. You can email us at info@insidethewolfsden.com. Otherwise, we will see you all next week and appreciate you listening.
See you, everyone.
You've been listening to Inside the Wolf's Den, an entrepreneurial journey with Shawn and Joni Wolfswinkle. Tons of entrepreneurial podcasts are out there. Talking. But Joni and Shawn are living it every single day. Their portfolio now includes many franchises and medium-sized businesses. We talk about the trials and motivators of successfully running a business. Join us again soon for another podcast. But until then, reach out on the website at InsideTheWolfsDen.com, on Facebook at Inside the Wolf's Den, on Instagram at Inside the Wolf Den. We'll see you again soon. This is Inside the Wolf's Den. We'll see you next time.